would like to welcome everyone live, and Danny here with me as my very first guest for season 5 of the Hempy Talks, all the way from Minnesota. And I cannot be more excited than this to have you here and to tell us more about hemp and the Lower Sioux Indian Community. I was really looking forward to this talk, and the most exciting part, which I will ask you about first, is the connection between industrial hemp and the community, because we know that your community works differently, and there is a tribal council and there are visionary leaders. And my question is about, how did they buy into hemp?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. First off, thanks for having me. But it all goes back to one of our tribal council. I call him my hemp dad, Earl Pendleton. He came up with this crazy idea, years ago, over a decade ago, to build hempcrete houses on our reservation. And in order to do that, he then started looking into farming the hemp, and then he did a feasibility study on processing equipment so that we could process our hemp into the building material that we needed. And he always had this closed loop business model type of thing in mind. And now this is all coming to fruition, and so it all goes back to that. He was on tribal council at the time when he was pushing for these hemp houses. And so I think that was a major key to us being successful, is having him spearheading this while he was on the tribal council. That's the highest level of our government, in a tribal community, is the tribal council, and so in order for a business to be successful, you got to have support of the tribal council. And, he did, I'm sure he had a lot of pushback from other members of the tribal council, even other members of the community as well, just because hemp has such a negative stigma around it, or historically it always has. So I think it was an uphill battle mostly, and now here we are, kind of, everything's coming online. We're still not, I'm not claiming that we're well-oiled machine or anything. We're still dialing in a lot of the things, but we're learning as we go, and it's really revitalized our community. The people have really started to buy into it. My crew, especially, all the guys on my crew, they're community members. And so I always say, take the hemp out of it, and just the story of us being community members, rebuilding our community for our community members. I think that's a pretty good story in itself. And then you add in all of the great things of the sustainability of hemp, and the environmental stewardship that it brings. I think it's just a win across the board. And so the community really has just all bought into it now.
Yes, that's brilliant. And when I was getting ready for the talk and I was Googling you a little bit, I found lots of amazing things in the last 2 years, but I'm pretty sure that it started much earlier than that. So what was the beginning like?
Yeah, so our building crew hasn't even been hired on for 2 years. It's more like a year and a half. And that's where you see most of the news articles. If you look it up, it's all about the buildings. And I think if we could go back in time, we would just build first and then try and do all of the other stuff, the growing and the processing, because it is a lot. It's trying to do a lot in a very infant industry. And so the beginning, when we started growing in 2016, me and the building crew, we weren't hired on at this point. And so it was just Earl and the council experimenting. And so they just hired a farmer to grow some acreage back in 2016, just kind of like a trial. or attest, and that's before the 2018 Farm Bill. And so it just goes to show you kind of the forward thinking that Earl had in this, to already be doing that. I think there was a special permit through the Obama administration that they did some hemp grows in the U.S. before that Farm Bill. And so we had that going, and in the community, everybody was against it. A lot of the elders thought we were growing drugs, or the community was that's what they thought hemp was, and so it was a battle for everyone, I guess. Like I said, we still weren't hired on, but it just kept pushing through. I think around 2020 or 2021. Earl had taken myself and another community member down to a hemp building symposium in Austin, Texas, and that's where we got to meet a lot of the already people building in the U.S. and it opened our eyes to everything that was going on. And then we even hired a consultant from there to come and train us in a hempcrete workshop, and that was the start of the building side of it, I guess. And that's when I got hired on. And so I don't have a lot of details from before I was hired on, but I know it was definitely a struggle for Earl, because he had been preaching the hemp gospel for years, and it seemed to be getting a lot more pushback
Yes.
than it does now, for sure. He's got a lot of people converted.
Yes, it just shows how often, that determination is needed and perseverance. And even though we live in 2025, when a global library is available to anyone at any time, to any extent, and I think research studies included, still the ambiguity around industrial hemp and cannabis and the mixing up the two still comes into the conversation so often, which is just very surprising, I would say. But also, people who are on the journey of raising awareness, and they come from the mindset of let's create value and let's create it locally for our community, by our community. If they stand strong long enough, then they are going to harvest the fruits, and that's really nice and admirable. There is a Green Buffalo movie that came up in my search, and as part of Patagonia films. So I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list. What is important to know about it, and how is it helping you, or how did it help you to get rid of the stigma around hemp?
Well, I don't want to spoil the film for you now. Now you just got to watch it.
Okay.
No, no, it's just a short 19-minute film, and it's actually for the Patagonia workwear. So Patagonia is actually producing hemp clothing for their workwear line, and so they have different films that they do, I guess. This was through their workwear. It was specifically driven towards that. The way it came about, I guess. There's a guy that directed it named Joel Caldwell from Charleston, South Carolina. And he had been pitching a hemp story to Patagonia for years. And he even went to a hemp building workshop down in South Carolina. And he wanted to do the story kind of about the hemp movement in South Carolina. But they just couldn't. They had farmers. They just couldn't get the processing going. They had farmers and they had builders, but they didn't have the missing link. And so the grist, there was a grist article. I don't know if you came across that one,
Yep.
but there was a grist article that a lady, Judith Matloff, had written about us, and she had came out from somewhere in the East Coast. She wanted to build with hempcrete as well, so she came out and took a tour, and then she's an author, and so she wrote an article about us. And the owner of Patagonia, his daughter read that article, and then reached out to the editors of Patagonia and said, go do a story, or go find these guys and do a story. And so then they reached back out to Joel and said, hey, do you still want to do a hemp story? Go find these guys. Joel reached out to us. And then he brought a crew out. I think they were here maybe 2 or 3 times. Yeah, for surely 3 times they came out just throughout the year following us around, doing different things. And then they made the story. We didn't tell them what to put in the story. They just kind of came, followed us around, saw what they saw, and then, made a story about it. And it tells a little bit of history of our community as well. And so I think Joel did an amazing job in that short 19 minutes. But yeah, if you get a chance, you should watch it. It does tell a lot about what we're doing here, I guess. So it gives a lot of context in the short 19 minutes.
Yes. So let me just recommend everyone, the Green Buffalo and the 90 minutes to get to know more about the community and get to know more about hemp as well. And that's one of the, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, so it did get taken off of YouTube right now. So you have to go to the actual Patagonia website to find it. And that was because it got selected for the Santa Barbara International Film Festival that's coming up next week. And so it has to do its world premiere or whatever at that film festival, and then it'll be back on YouTube. So you might have to do some digging to find it, because they kind of tried to hide it right now while it's waiting for that. So
yeah, thank you. Good to know. And let's keep digging for the Green Buffalo, which I would say also one of the success stories among the many that you had. And another one which I was really, really happy about is that this year the Hemp Building Symposium is coming to your community, which I think is a great choice, whoever made the decision. And I'm wondering what's the story behind that. How did you show up on their radar?
Well, so Steve Allen is the head of the International Hemp Building Association. And, he's one of the godfathers of hemp building. And he has books. I have his book right here. I carry one around in my backpack all the time. And so, I had been following him for a while. I actually been trying to go to the symposium the last few years, but they're always overseas, and so I can't really afford to go to Sweden for a week or France or any of these places. And so I've always wanted to go. And so we kind of had been talking about it with Cameron McIntosh from Amerishaw. And so he's from Allentown, Pennsylvania. And he has a lot of, connections with the people in France and all that. And so he was already going to be sponsoring this in 2024, the one in Sweden. And Steve had reached out and told him, hey, the symposium's coming up, asked about the sponsorship. And so then Cameron reached out to me and asked if we would be a sponsor as well. And so Cameron asked Steve, if we sponsor, will you bring the symposium to the United States, to Lower Sioux next year? And Steve said, absolutely. And so, I don't know if we were actually on their radar or any of that stuff, but I had reached out to Steve a few times just with some of the issues we had with some of our builds, and he was always responsive right away. Kind of like a free consultant almost, and so he's just an amazing guy, along with Cameron as well. And so I think it's going to be a great event, because I think it's time that event comes to the United States. I don't know if I don't know how other countries look at the United States right now or any of that, but I think it'll be good to showcase what we're doing, or the movement that's going on, not just here at the Lower Sioux, but the whole United States. There's a lot of hemp stuff going on right now. We're right on the cusp of a big boom. There's a lot of processors coming online, a lot more people interested in building, a lot of farmers, a lot of acres getting put into the ground and also being harvested, not just being planted, but also being harvested and being used for something. And so it's just a matter of time. And it's coming. And so I think it's perfect timing to have this symposium.
Yes, can only agree with you that it's a perfect timing to bring the symposium there, and not only to showcase what you have built and where you are in your journey, but also showcase the power of the community, because the power of the community really is undervalued all over the world, and that can be an example that can inspire communities all around the world to start out no matter what and to persevere and go and keep going until they reach a breakthrough. Then they go and they reach another milestone and they keep growing, and that's very, very inspirational. And I loved all the stories you were sharing, and thank you so much for that. I wish for the symposium the success. I'm really hoping to be there, but also hoping that I can cross the ocean and be there and meet you maybe in person. For everybody listening now, we are going to end the podcast recording here and open up the floor for a very nice discussion for those people who joined. And next week, I'm going to welcome you back with another interesting episode that is going to be with Heather, who is making hemp ceramics all the way from South Africa. She's going to be joining, and that's going to be us next week. But for today, thank you so much, Danny, for joining us and for sharing this story, and wishing all the best to your community, and keep growing hemp and keep inspiring people and communities all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you.